happens to all of us. So appreciate everybody's patience here. So Dan Davis, founder and CEO of Arcadian Infracom. I have with me Jerry Wolf, who's actually lived in Denver for a long time until very recently. So of course, both big fans of Colorado and spend a lot of time in the communities there. So appreciate the opportunity to share with you, what we're doing here. Give you a little bit of background of where we came from, how this came together. Maybe out of this whole thing, usually what we hope to accomplish is people have a better understanding of why the rural and tribal broadband problem exists. And that comes, a realization of what the problem is really what led to Arcadian. And then a lot of, just as often happens in business, being in the right time in the right place to actually then solve the problem. So we'll unpack all that. So I'll spend some time the front half of the presentation giving you some background on Arcadian, and then kind of Jerry can then we'll go take it a level down. What are we doing in Colorado? Timing of the route and those kinds of things. So from a background perspective, as Ed said, got started in 2018, and the thing we do is building new long-haul fiber backbones through the U.S. Been at this, building long-haul fiber myself 30 years, Jerry, that long, if not maybe a little longer. For us, the internet is a bunch of data centers sprinkled around the planet that's connected by fiber. That's the global backbone of the internet. And then eventually that fiber, a connection gets down to your home and your business where it delivers services to your eyes and ears. But the internet itself, the infrastructure, is nothing but data centers and fiber connected together. And then it connects to local networks that go to your homes and businesses. So I purposefully make it sound simple because it quite frankly is. It's really about the question of whether you have good broadband at home is basically a direct derivative of how close you are to the internet backbone. So hold that thought. It'll kind of all come together, I think, with that realization as we show you some maps. So what we do, we build new long haul routes connecting data centers. It looks like we're connecting Salt Lake to Phoenix, and we are, but what we're really doing is connecting the big data centers in Salt Lake to the big data centers in Phoenix for our customers. We also, and so they really want to connect Salt Lake data center to a Phoenix data center. Our second set of customers are really the folks with markets in between along our route who want to connect the small markets along our route back to the Phoenix or Salt Lake City. So for us, it's really about, endpoint to endpoint for one set of customers, and then midpoint back to the endpoints for another set of customers. And that's that last part that gets really interesting here as far as using this long haul fiber business as an economic development tool for rural and tribal communities. We're privately funded. We're a bunch of industry veterans who have been doing this for probably the youngest of us 20 years, and some of us a little bit twice that. So we've been doing this for a while. And we are aligned with some global infrastructure investors. These are very patient investors who want to build enduring physical assets. They'll invest in long haul fiber like us, but they'll also build roads, bridges, airports, ports, big capital intensive projects that have a very long life. And that becomes important in this business. We really got started with a partnership with the Navajo Nation in 2018. And we were able to work out a partnership with the Navajo Nation to build long haul fiber for the first time through the Navajo Nation. That allowed us to create some long haul route solutions between Salt Lake and Phoenix and Salt Lake and Denver that were never before achievable. We'll put a map up that makes that clear. We are not a service provider. In other words, you won't, to our knowledge, read about Arcadian broadband delivering to your house. We're the folks that do the basic infrastructure across the continent. Our customers are the service providers. Our customers are not just the cloud companies, but potentially CenturyLink or Comcast, cable companies, telcos who buy our transport from small markets along our route back to the endpoints. Those are the names you'll see. You'll never know they're using our network. They buy individual strands off of our network to then create businesses for themselves on top of what we build. So probably the best way to think of us, once we're done constructing and put this in the ground, you'll never know we're there. We're going to be like the pipes in your walls that you never know they're there until something breaks. It's just such a base level infrastructure. Another way to think about it, we're the foundation of the house that you build. Once you're done building the house, the foundation is invisible. It's essential for everything on top of that foundation, but that's the way to think about where we are in this internet ecosystem. We're that big long haul route that enables everything, but we kind of become invisible once we're done constructing. As I indicated, very, very experienced team. And the core of what our team does, we custom built this team to build long haul routes. It's very hard to build long haul routes. The construction methods are hard, and Jerry will share some of that with you. We these giant kind of diamond bit rock saws to cut through rock. That's hard. It's also what I think is probably from a business perspective hardest is assembling rights of way. So as we build, from Salt Lake to Phoenix to Tuba City over to Denver, we're talking, 800-ish miles through some of the hardest rock in North America. But what's really hard is making sure you have the right to build every inch of that fiber from end to end. And if you don't have every bit of the real estate rights you have, you can't actually create the connection. So the hard part is about getting the rights away, and that becomes important to the whole story here. So what we're optimized to do is, put together, relationships with 50 something different agencies on a given 800-mile route, all of whose permit is required, but no one permit is sufficient. So it's about engagement. It's about events like these. We're going to come through. We've done a lot of work with rights of way providers already, with CDOT and some other folks, but there's more to do as we develop that route and get that last inch of rights of way to complete the whole route. So you'll find us very engaged with local communities, very engaged with the federal government, very engaged with state governmental entities to put all of those permits together. It's just kind of our mugshot page. So I think the takeaway here is, most of us, as I said, are kind of done this at least once, some of us 2 and 3 times. And you've kind of scanned the kind of list of places where people have worked. We really have worked all throughout the industry and have a lot of relationships that are important to be successful here. This is a map of the internet as we're using it here today. So these black lines are rough approximations of where the long haul fiber is that was built mostly in the 1990s by people like Jerry and I. And so you'll notice these black lines these are the backbone routes, right? This is the core of the internet. These are where, all the global traffic flows back and forth. And you'll notice through the red circles, there's areas that we didn't, people like Jerry and I didn't build, right? So we connected, Kansas City to, Denver, and, we, built some diversity, 2 or 3 different paths here, but a lot of us built right along each other, because what's the hardest thing to do in long haul fiber? Get rights of way. So when we found easy rights of way in the 90s, we all built right alongside each other, right? And it was the rational economic thing to do when you're building Internet 1.0. You needed to build between 2 points. What's the easiest rights of way to build? And that's what we all built. But what it caused is essentially the core problem of the rural and tribal broadband. Here's the issue. It's really easy to understand, we think. So you got rural community. I grew up in Pleasant Plains, Illinois, 654 people. I think it's probably shrunk since I've moved away. 654 people, central Illinois, and you have a long haul route that's over 100 miles away, right? To get good broadband in a small rural market, you need a direct, affordable connection from that market back to the backbone where the internet lives. The farther away you are, the more expensive it is to make that connection. It costs, roughly $40,000 to $300,000 a mile to build this stuff, depending on geography, is it rock? Is it nice farmland like central Illinois? Very, very expensive per mile to build this. So you got, less than 700 person community, 100 miles to build. minimum 40,000 a mile to build that. Is it ever going to make economic sense to build that connection to that small market from the backbone? It really won't. The commercial proposition to build it just isn't there. But you've got to close the distance. Remember, the importance is how far from the rural community to the backbone. We've got to close that distance. Can I move the rural community? No. What's the one choice I have? Move the backbone. That's the key to Arcadian. Our large global technology companies want new fiber connections between their data centers so that when they want 4 routes, so that when all 3 get cut at the same time, which happens, the 4th stays up. By building new long haul, you want it diverse from the other 3 routes, so when 3 gets cut, that cut doesn't happen anywhere near yours, the 4th stays up. So by definition, when I'm doing what I want to do for my commercial customers, I'm building in places that have never been built through because they need to be diverse from existing backbones. Now I'm going through rural America that's never been built through, and I'm solving the problem for those communities that are too far from the backbones. Community, backbone, now there's a new backbone closer to the community. That's how Arcadian works. The thing we're doing that makes commercial sense for us solves the rural broadband problem by bringing the backbone closer to communities along our route. That's how Arcadian kind of all hangs together, where the commercial has this amazing social and economic impact on rural and tribal America. So here you see what we layered onto the map. Where those data centers, remember I talked about those data centers? This is where the data centers are. They're on the convergence of multiple long haul routes, because remember, if you're going to put $1 billion data center in Salt Lake and fiber gets cut, all the time, you want to make sure you have at least 3, if not 4 or 5 long haul routes into that data center. They locate the data centers in these markets, not necessarily because that's where the people are, but because that's where the convergence of the long haul routes are. So black is existing, the green and the blue are new routes that we're designing and building now. So you see, with respect to Colorado, we're going to snake, right up through, the hardest parts of Colorado, and Jerry can kind of explain kind of how we rerouted to do a little bit more good while we did it. In orange, you see Navajo Nation. Once we got our Navajo Nation deal done in 2018, it allowed us to build the routes that you see in front of you. So I'll hand it over to Jerry now. I know I've been moving pretty fast. Let me do this. Let me pause. Just for any high-level question, Ed, or any clarifications you want me to offer before I hand it over to Jerry. No? Okay. All right, Jerry, you want to kind of take us a level down and talk about what we're doing and how we're doing it?
All right, so now we get to the stuff that you guys really care about. So here's Colorado, as Dan said, very near and dear. Very excited to have an opportunity to be back building in Colorado. So this is our route just in Colorado, where you see near Durango in the southwest corner. That route comes in from Tuba City, and the entire route from Tuba City to Denver is about 100 million total. What you see on here in Colorado is about 60 million. So a big chunk of change to build in Colorado through those great Rocky Mountains. It's a total 348 miles within Colorado. 309 of that is represented in the green on the map. That's Arcadian new build. 39 miles, the red and the blue, are partnership with either a joint build with CDOT or existing CDOT conduit. So part of that is over Wolf Creek Pass, the piece that CDOT built a few years ago. Will be using that existing conduit, and then we're involved in the joint build, just getting ready to start next month, I believe. And then we will be looking at putting in a minimum 288 fiber on the route. We haven't really locked it down yet, but overall, that's kind of the base, as low as we would go. In our build, we'll be putting in a 7 conduit future path And so it really is trying to set this up so that, kind of future proofing, making sure that there's expansion for whatever needs Southwest Colorado may need. If you look down in the bottom of the lower left-hand corner of the map, that Durango, Pagosa Springs, you see kind of a shaded area. That is the Southern Ute area. And that's another party that we have been working closely with for several years, working on through an agreement with them, and just kind of really, trying to help enable both tribes, the Ute Mountain Ute and the Southern Ute, with the fiber that we're bringing in. When we first looked at our route, when we first had it designed before we met with Colorado, we were planning on coming across a little bit further south, coming through New Mexico and then popping up, going up to South Fork and jumping up to on 285. And we met with the state and they said, well, why aren't you coming into Colorado earlier? We have kind of this need in the southwest corner of the state. And we said, you got Wolf Creek Pass there. That's kind of scary and big. And I'm not sure, would you ever let us build there? And well, as a matter of fact, we're getting ready to start a build. So this is kind of how we look at partnering. And we said, yeah, let's take a look at it. And pretty immediately said, yep, we can make this work. So that's how this route was developed. We will have little yellow dots that you see along the map are our targeted, in that general area, regen locations. We'll have 7 of them along the route every 50 miles. We'll also have handholds, about 500 of them along the route, every less than a mile, about every 4,000 feet, we'll have a handhold. So in comparison to the long haul routes that I built 100 years ago, when they were first building fiber, when you were just really looking to get from endpoint to endpoint, and you'd have your regens, and that was really it. You really weren't thinking about introducing people cutting into your fiber along the route. We're designing and really strategically laying out this network totally different. And so that we can, by having the handholds there and really planning to be able to tap into that fiber along the way so that we can enable communities and interested people to really start to get the bandwidth back into the communities rather than just passing through and nobody can benefit from that. We are right now targeting landing at 9, 10, 15th Street, which is the place to be from a broadband perspective in Denver, and still working through some of the details within the city, how we get there. But generally, that's the end-to-end route. As I kind of alluded to when we were talking about meeting with Colorado, that's really how Arcadian has approached all of our right-of-way partnerships, is instead of coming in and saying, hey, here's what we need to do and what can you do for us, it's really us approaching by saying, is there a need in your community that we can help to meet? And so as we were looking at Colorado, so far we've reached out to, I believe, all of the directors of the COGS, the Council of Governments, really got involved with Southwest Colorado, obviously, coming in through the state there. And Ed has done a great job of just introducing us into all of those groups to say, if we can, if you're along the route, how can we help? Been working closely with DOT. We've got our agreement signed now, and are working closely on where and how we can help to cover some of their needs that they have along this route. Obviously working with that partnership on Wolf Creek Pass. We've talked to the Park Service. There are needs along the route where we'll be able to help enable some broadband to potentially be able to ease some of the backups getting into the parks if they don't have good connectivity to check people in and buy tickets, things like that. And then obviously the tribes, trying to work with them to make sure that we're not just passing through and leaving anybody behind. So when Arcadian thinks about, what our overall execution goals are, we're really looking at, trying to close that divide. And because most of these permits are issued by, the governmental entities, the rights of way, this is a big part of trying to understand. We're going to go in and build this. Our customers are driving endpoint to endpoint, but we have a lot of flexibility on where we can build. So trying to marry up the best routes from a build standpoint, but also trying to solve as many needs along the way as we possibly can. In the rural and tribal communities. And so we really don't, when we first start out, we put a line on the map that makes sense to us, but we go into our initial meetings with a very open mind to say what makes sense, how can we make sure that, we can learn what the needs are in that area. And so as a result of that, we can come in with a cost-free way to help create this development in the communities. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to say, hey, go away, Arcadian, we really don't want you here, when we're coming in and saying you've got you've got an issue, or you potentially have a gap here, and we've got the funding to help you do that. And then in conjunction with what we're doing, we're also able to really meet some social impact, and a lot of good comes out of this, because we are able to serve the tribal communities, and it's just an opportunity to really reach out to a lot of these areas that have not been able to get connectivity, bringing jobs, bringing opportunities to some of these communities. This is our schedule for our first route, which will be kicking off very likely this August. And it will be the first part of this, as you saw on the Y, the Phoenix to Salt Lake City piece. And it's about a 24-month cycle. And so we're planning to, from when we first started that detailed engineering. And so we're anticipating if we start, I guess we'll wrap up construction at the end of 23, and then be able to deliver fiber and wave services in that or the end of 22, sorry, wave services first quarter of 23. This is kind of the timeline for Tuba City to Denver, and when we actually kick that off is going to be dependent on the commercial viability of this route, since we are, privately funded, and we don't want to go in and build fiber where we have not validated that it's going to be, useful for customers, or that it won't, pay itself back. So we're working very closely with customers that there's a lot of interest in this route. And so we're working on, the timing of when that will start. We're hoping to be able to get the detailed engineering and right-of-way work started yet this year. That would give us a good jump start into just getting that piece. The permitting is one of the longest cycle times of this whole process in many of the federal areas. And so that would give us a good jump start. And then once we had that commitment from the customers that's necessary to take it forward, we'd be in a much better position to move forward more quickly. And then finally, this is our third route that we have publicly announced. We're looking at, 13 to 20, depending on the day, others across the country. But this is the one that's pretty well baked, and that would be from Los Angeles to Dallas. And so this is that high level view, similar to what we just showed with Tuba City to Denver on the high level timeframes. And again, it would be started dependent on when we had that customer commitment. Dan, you're on mute.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate the additional detail there. Let's let me a couple of things. Let me, of course, for purposes of Colorado, this is the key piece. So as you can see, as we try to line up, financing of the routes. You try to align that with where people are willing to buy. And so Salt Lake to Phoenix, as Jerry said, we expect to start that this summer. It's an essential part of Phoenix to Denver. And then the Tuba City to Denver, that's a separate business case we're working on. We do have customer interest in it. It's been a little bit slower growth on the customer demand side, to support the financing, but we've been working
The
with.
doctor's saying.
What's that?
He said that. Really, I didn't even talk with him that long. I've talked to him forever. He had so many patients. Anyway, the thing that's concerning him now is.
Hey, Ed, do you have an ability?
Does this pressure thing where he pushes on my.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out who that is.
This guy is.
If everyone who can
really
hear me, if you would go ahead and place yourself on mute.
So.
We're getting some feedback here.
All right. So I just wanted to kind of touch on kind of Tuba City to Denver, which we've done, again, we've done within Navajo Nation, we've invested, a few million already within the rights of way. But as Jerry was saying, this is a commercially, a privately funded route. We are working with, folks at the federal and the state level within Colorado and outside of Colorado on whether there's a priority that would make sense for Colorado to provide some funding to accelerate the kickoff date. But this is a route, each route kind of has its own meets and bounds of demand and timing. The first one, Salt Lake to Phoenix, was the highest demand. And so that's the first route we're doing. I wish I could give you certainty on when the Denver route would kick off. It's not the first, that's all we know. It's really based on commercial viability, based on customer demand. But as probably everybody on this phone knows, there's a fair amount of public policy priority to solve rural and tribal broadband problems, and a fair amount of resources being put after that problem. So we are engaging with all the tribes and the state and the federal government in various grant application programs, and we'll be submitting some on our own and some in partnership with some folks for funding to accelerate the kickoff of this Denver leg. So no certainties there, as with any grant process, but it is one of those routes that to make it happen, kind of immediately, we'd need, kind of some additional financial support, unless a customer could pop out, and they sometimes do, kind of out of nowhere and suddenly push this to the top of their queue as far as buying and, to support the commercial business case. But it is a solid, it's a solid route. We put a lot of time into it. We know that eventually we'll kick it off. We just don't have any certainty right now on when that will be. But as Jerry said, we hope to be in a position to start that, what is it, probably on this route, 6-8 month final engineering and permitting cycle, and try to get ahead of that. So just unpack that, 6 to 8 months to probably do final engineering permitting, and that's in the a few $1 million, and then the most of it, the $100 million, would be the actual construction of it, and that's probably a 2-year process. This is one of the tougher routes because of the weather in Wolf Creek, but CDOT is taking the lead on making that happen, which I think will be a 2-season build for them that they hope to kick off this kind of this season yet before the snow flies again. So just wanted to kind of some discussion on kind of the timing specifics on this route, as I know that piece of the route is one of the toughest we'll build, Wolf Creek. We have a great relationship with CDOT. As Jerry said, we've signed our partnership agreement with them, and they're looking to get the Wolf Creek piece kicked off, but it will be a 2-season build, and that's probably, this just is what it is, and that's going to probably be the pacing item on the timing here. So that's love to get some questions, kind of comments, clarifications we could offer at this point, Ed, from the crowd out there or from you.
Yeah, so if you have any questions for anyone on the team with Arcadian, please feel free to go ahead and ask it now. We don't have anything in the chat. And if you don't really like to talk, go ahead and send us a question in the chat, and we'll make sure that we talk about it.
And so while that's coming together, if anybody had any questions, kind of maybe Jerry, on the, we just a quick, are we looking at probably an 18 or 21 build, depending on what time it kicks off, or what do we think the real? I know we've got this up on the screen, the construction timing, but is it really more like 24, kind of from the time we kind of kick the whole thing off?
Yeah, realistically, I would say it's probably closer to the 24 month from when we kick it off. And part of that is based on the permitting, the timelines on the federal permits, some of those longer lead times. And we do our best to try to, leapfrog. So if we've got a forest somewhere in the middle of the route that, it's going to take 12 months to get that permit, we'll build up to it. And then, if we need to skip over it and then come back and fill in those gaps. Obviously weather, and even on the Phoenix to Salt Lake City route, we'll be looking at, some weather challenges during certain areas, but Colorado, obviously, an unpredictable build season. So we're planning for 24.
Okay. Ed, any follow-up questions from anyone?
Yeah,
Corey,
go ahead.
Corey Brindle with Region 10 in Colorado. When you're looking at funding and revenue to support, committing to the construction and the build, are you after data center customers in the cities to support and hold up the long haul run, or are you looking at the providers along the run, or is it biased one direction or another, or does it just not matter?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. You've identified, very insightfully our two main customer sets. It's the folks that are connecting data center to data center on the end, and then, basically carriers, ISPs, regionals, connecting from midpoint to the back. And so, I'd say, the hyperscalers, the big data center companies tend to buy more strands and produce more revenue than the carriers as a group. But that's just kind of how the ecosystem works, these days. So, dollars are dollars from our perspective. And we're just kind of really getting to that kind of de-risk point where we can kick it off from wherever the dollars come from.
So are you investing, sorry for a follow-up, are you investing time out in the field, contacting our small and medium tier 2, tier 3 carriers along the route to help stand up that financing?
We absolutely are. Yeah, we've been out there working in the marketplace for over 2 years. So we really launched sales in the beginning of 19. Gotcha. And so we'll actually have a significant presence at Mountain Connect, and that's a big part of that effort. Making a big investment there at Mountain Connect. So if you're there, you'll have an opportunity to meet us face to face.
Great. Look forward to catching you up there. Thanks for taking the question.
Thank you, Corey. Anyone else have questions? We've got one here that's just come up from Jeremy. He says, I work with CDOT and I'm working on a utility contract concerning the cost sharing. Who would be the primary person I should send the contract to? Name, title, email, phone, emailing address.
I think the question is around being a vendor of Arcadian for the construction. Is that how you read the question?
Jeremy, can you give us some more information?
I'm working with Kevin Walters in Region 5. That's the southwest region that blankets over Wolf Creek Pass. And working on an incurred cost contract. And I just need a little bit of information to put on our checklist and then send it up to our contract people, and then they'll build the contract. But we need the name of the recipient who would be, reviewing the contract and maybe even signing it or passing it up to someone who would be signing it along with that other information I requested.
So Ed, this sounds like more of a CDOT question. Am I?
It does. And so, Jeremy, we can take that offline. I'll put my information in the chat. And if you would contact me, I'll get you some help there.
Okay, sounds great. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the question. Anyone else have questions for either Dan or Jerry or anybody on the team? It's sounding like you did a great job, Dan and Jerry. Sounds like
we put everyone to sleep. You never
I'll give another plead. Anyone else have any other questions? We'll give you about 18 seconds to respond, and if I don't hear anything, we'll go ahead and give you some time back in your day. Anybody have any questions? Well, we're excited about this opportunity, the potential of it. And we know that it is something that Colorado needs. And I will say that Arcadian has been great to work with. At one point, when we thought that this project would move along quicker than it would, we knew that we wouldn't have time to talk to all the municipalities and counties along the route. And I just asked them, would you consider opening up fiber access at any of the major intersections? And they, without hesitation, said absolutely. So it is something that if you need more information about, you'll find my contact information, my email in the chat. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Or if you don't have contact with Arcadian, let me know. But we're very excited about the possibility here. And we are hoping that you join us every week or every month for the Lunch and Learn series. We try to bring you things that are interesting. And if there's anything that you would like to hear us bring in the Lunch and Learn, please don't hesitate. But I will thank you, Dan and Jerry from Arcadian. Thank you for your time, and we hope you all have a very great day.
Great. Thank you both. Have a good day. Bye.
Very good. Thank you. Ed. Thank you for coming.